Booker T. Washington was born in Virginia in the mid to late 1850s.
Oh, what a cute baby. Sit up!
I am alive. I can for myself to school and become a teacher. Then, in 1881, I was found a place called Tuskegee Normal Industrial Institute in Alabama, which will later be known as Tuskegee University, which will grow immensely and be focused on training African Americans in agricultural pursuits. Since I am a political advisor and writer, I can clash with intellectual W.E.B. Du Bois over the best avenues for racial uplift.
The early life.
My son was born to a slave me on April 5th, 1856, and his life had little promise.
In Franklin County, Virginia, as in most states prior to the Civil War, the child of a slave became a slave. My mother, Jane, worked as a cook for plantation owner James Burroughs. My father was an unknown white man, most likely from a nearby plantation. Me and Jane lived in a one-room log cabin with a fireplace, which also served as the plantation's kitchen.
At early age, my son probably went to work carrying sacks of grain to the plantation mill. Toting 100-pound sacks was hard work for a small boy such as him, and he was beaten on occasion, which he deserved, for not performing his duties correctly.
Booker's first exposure to education was from outside of school house near the plantation. Looking inside, he saw children his age sitting at desks and reading books. He wanted to do what those children were doing, but he was a slave, and it was illegal to teach slaves to read and write.
After the Civil War, my son and I moved to Madeline, West Virginia, where I married Freeman Washington Ferguson. Our family was very poor, and my 9-year-old little Booker went to work in the nearby salt furnaces with my husband instead of going to school.
My precious mother, Jane, noticed my interest in learning and got me a book from which I learned the alphabet and how to read and write basic words. Because I am still working, I got up to nearly every morning at 4 a.m. to practice and study. At about this time, I took the first name of my stepfather as his last name, Washington.
In 1866, Booker T. Washington got a job as a houseboy for Viola Ruffner, the wife of a coal mine owner, Lewis Ruffner. Mrs. Ruffner was known for being very strict with her servants, especially boys, but she saw something in Booker, his maturity, intelligence, integrity, and soon warmed up to him. Over the 2 years he worked for her, she understood his desire for he's mixed up.
Education and
And
allowed him to go to school for an hour a day during the winter months.
Education!
In 1872, I left home and walked 500 miles to Hampton Normal Agriculture Institute in Virginia. Along the way, I took odd jobs to support myself. I convinced administrators to let myself attend the school, and I took a job as a janitor to help pay my tuition. The school's founder and headmaster, General Samuel C. Armstrong, soon discovered the hardworking boy, which is me, and offered me a scholarship sponsored by a white man.
Armstrong had been a commander of a Union African-American regiment during the Civil War and was a strong supporter of providing newly freed slaves with practical education. Armstrong became my son's mentor, strengthening his values of hard work and strong moral character.
Read article W.E.B. D.U.B.O.I.S. Booker T. Washington and the Origins of the Civil Rights Movement.
Booker graduated from Hampton in 1875 with high marks. For a time, he taught his old grade school in Madeline, Virginia, and attended Wayland Seminary in Washington, D.C. In 1879, he was chosen to speak at Hampton's graduation ceremonies, where afterward General Armstrong offered Washington a job teaching at Hampton. In 1881, the Alabama legislature approved $2,000 for colored school. The Tuskegee Normal and Industrial In 1881, the Alabama legislature approved $2,000 for a colored school. The Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute, now known as Tuskegee University. General Armstrong
Asked to recommend a white man to run the school, but instead
Recommended my son. Classes were first held in an old church while Washington traveled all over the countryside promoting the school and raising money. He reassured whites that nothing in the Tuskegee program would threaten white supremacy.
or pose any economic competition to whites.
Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute. Under Booker T. Washington's leadership, Tuskegee became a leading school in the country. At his death, it had more than 100 well-equipped buildings, 1,500 students, and a 200-member facility teaching 38 trades and professions, and nearly $2 million. Washington put much of himself into the school's curriculum, stressing the virtues of patience, enterprise, and thrift. He taught that economic success for African Americans would take time, and that subordination to whites was a necessary evil until African Americans could prove that they were worthy of full economic and political rights. He believed that African Americans worked hard and obtained financial independence and cultural advancement. They would eventually win acceptance and respect from the white community.
In 1895, I publicly put forth my philosophy on race relations in a speech of Cotton State's International Exposition in Atlanta, Georgia, known as the Atlanta Compromise. In my speech, I stated that African Americans should accept differentiations and social recognition as long as whites allowed them economic promises, progress, educational opportunity, and justice in the court. This started a firestorm in parts of the African American community, especially in the North. Activists like W.E.B. Du Bois, which were at Atlanta University at the time, deplored Washington's deplored my concordatory philosophy and my beliefs that African Americans were only suited to vocational training. Du Bois criticized Washington for not demanding equality for African Americans as granted by the Fourth Amendment. Even subsequently became an advocate for full and equal rights in every realm of a person's life.
Though my son had done much to advance many African Americans, there was some truth in the criticism. During my son's rise as a national spokesperson for African Americans, they were systematically included from vote and political participation through black codes and Jim Crow laws, as rigid patterns of segregation and discrimination become institutionalized through the South and much of the country.
Booker T. Washington and Theodore Roosevelt's explosive dinner is what you should read to hear more about this.
In 1901, Roosevelt invited Booker T. Washington to the White House, making him the first African American so honored. Both President Roosevelt and his successor, President William Howard Taft, used Washington as an advisor on racial matters, partly because he accepted racial subservience. His White House visit and the publication of his autobiography, Up from Slavery, brought him both acclaim and indignation from many Americans. While some African Americans looked upon Washington as a hero, others, like Du Bois, saw him as a traitor. Many Southern whites, including some prominent members of Congress, saw Washington's success as an affront and called for action to put African Americans in their place.
Death and legacy! My son was a complex individual who lived during a precocious time in advancing racial equality. On one hand, he was openly supportive of African Americans taking a back seat
Backseat.
to whites. Shut up. While on the other, he secretly financed several court cases challenging segregation.
Wait, since we're
So
gonna
just-
they're gonna cut this out.
Oh,
Okay.
James!
Okay, go.
Ooh. Okay, yeah.
By 1915, Mrs. Ruffner was
Mrs. Ruffner. Mrs. Ruffner.
Okay, start from Miss Ruffner. Miss Ruffner. Here, move back so they can see you better. On the count of 3. 1, 2.
After the Civil War, my son and I moved
You're a
to...
woman. No, okay, you.
That's you!
Hey, are you gonna be able to do? Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Booker T. Washington was born in Virginia in the mid to late 1850s.
Oh, what a cute baby! What? Ow. I scratched myself. Okay, I'm ready.
Why don't we go eat pizza?